Hello and good afternoon, late afternoon to all of you here. So excited to have you for our last batch of sessions at the Connecticut Affordable Housing Conference. Hopefully we'll see some of you at the Lyceum for a reception starting at 5:30 tonight. If not, I'd love to have a conversation with you at some point in the near future. If we haven't already met each other or had the pleasure of engaging in conversation. Um, we are here today uh, for our conversation with an incredible group of panelists talking about keeping manufactured housing affordable. It is, as I've already said, Tuesday the 18th at 3 p.m. And today's session is sponsored by Liberty Bank. So really grateful for their support for the conference and for the session in particular. And broadly, our conference sponsors at large. We're so thankful for all the support in making this a free and accessible learning opportunity for so many folks. Without any further ado, I want to make space for today's panelists and the conversation they've brought for you all. So I'm going to kick it over to David to kickstart today's conversation. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for hanging in to hear our presentation at the end of a long day. My name is Dave Delory, President of the Connecticut Manufactured Homeowners Alliance. The Alliance is a statewide volunteer organization recognized in statute as an advocate for the rights of manufactured home park residents in our state. Thank you, Chelsea, Danielle, and the staff of the Partnership for Strong Communities for the opportunity to participate in this event and to raise awareness of the affordability issues facing manufactured home park residents in Connecticut. I am a semi-retired Connecticut certified municipal assessor and a certified Connecticut commercial real estate appraiser, and I'm also a licensed realtor. My interest in manufactured home parks began in 2013 when my wife and I downsized to a park then operated by family-owned and Southington-based Jensen's Company. All was well until October 2019, when Jensen's merged with Michigan-based Sun Communities, a real estate investment trust operating manufactured home and RV parks around the country and as far away as the British Isles. That's when service of cutbacks and rent increases began in earnest, and I became an active member of the Alliance. Since that time, we've been trying to prevent other manufactured home park residents from falling victim to the predatory business practices of other out-of-state corporations and private equity investors. Those efforts have included the 2023 enactment of Public Act 23-125, which guarantees residents a right of first refusal to purchase their park by matching the price, terms, and conditions of any contract to sell accepted by the park owner. We have also advocated for measures intended to prevent land rent price gouging via legislation to expand fair rent commissions to cover more parks. And last year, we tried unsuccessfully to enact a manufactured home park rent mediation statute similar to existing Vermont statute, but stay tuned, we're coming back. The speakers you will hear today will provide additional personal perspectives on these efforts. Attorney Raphael Podolsky of the Connecticut Legal Service has been intricately involved in manufactured home park issues for over 30 plus years. Al Riz is the immediate past president of Ryder Woods in Milford, one of only 3 resident-owned manufactured home parks in our state. Dan Billings is leader of the Stonegate Manor Residents Association in Windham, which recently won a significant victory for residents before that town's Fair Rent Commission. Ben Mayo, leader of the Residents Association at Little Valley Mobile Home Park in Norwich, will describe their attempt to purchase their park using the right of first refusal statute. And finally, Nora Gosselin of Cooperative Development Institute. CDI is a Massachusetts nonprofit that has been helping manufactured park residents purchase their parks by a right of first refusal statutes in place in other New England states for a couple of decades now. Nora will talk about their process and the expanding efforts here in Connecticut since our statute was enacted. So with that, I'd just like to say that we'll take as many questions as we have at the end of the session, or you can contact us at our website, ctmhoa.org. Again, that's ctmhoa.org. Sorry, ctmhoa.org. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Attorney Raphael Podolsky. Raphael, you're up.
Dave, thanks very much. Can I be heard? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm on a tight 5-minute deadline here, and so Dave, please, if I hit the limit, please let me know. My background with mobile home parks goes back well into the 1980s. And I want to give you a little bit of background. I don't know if people who are listening are familiar with mobile home parks or not, so I want to give you some explanation of what they are. Our state's Mobile Home Park Act goes back at least until 1972. The thing about mobile homes is they are not, in fact, mobile, and that's the source of a lot of confusion. Moving a mobile home is really not a practical option for people who live in mobile home parks. Typically, the resident owns the home, but they rent the land on which it sits. Moving the home is very expensive. In many towns, mobile home parks are zoned out. And in fact, from a park owner perspective, they would rather have someone move in with a new home or buy a new home from them to bring in a used home that's already owned by someone else. For a long time, mobile home parks they were called trailer parks. They were looked at as if mobile homes were motor vehicles. They're not. They are not RVs. They're manufactured housing that is moved on a flatbed truck. And is essentially tethered to the ground on a foundation. Um, Over the years, Connecticut has moved from seeing mobile home parks as trailer parks to seeing them as housing, mobile manufactured housing. Um, and in 1986, Connecticut changed its statutes so that mobile homes are taxed as real estate property and not as personal motor vehicle property. There are 192 parks in Connecticut in roughly 55 towns. There are a lot of parks in eastern Connecticut. The town with the most parks is Montville. It has 28 parks, but the most units are in parks in East Hartford, Southington, and Groton. They're close to 1,000 lots that are in mobile home parks in Connecticut, close to 10,000. So the significance of the law as it applies to mobile home parks comes from the fact that because it is so difficult to move, there's a sense in which if you own a home in a park, moving is going to be too difficult. So it's important to have the rights of residents are important, and our statutes recognize that. And there are a lot of ways in which mobile home residents are similar to other tenants because they are tenants, but they are also typically homeowners, and the protections are therefore greater. And here I want to list out six of them for you. One is mobile home parks are regulated by the Department of Consumer Protection. They are licensed. The department has staff that's supposed to do enforcement of complaints. So you have an administrative agency you can file, a resident can file a complaint with. Second, there are protections against parks closing, because if a park closes, everybody would have to move. And what would typically happen is people would end up with no way to move their homes, no place to move them to. The homes would be abandoned. And that can be a significant asset. The home is a significant asset for the owner of the home. If a park's going to close, there's a year the owner would have to give a year and a half notice. They have to provide relocation assistance. And the residents have a right to buy the park. And one of the panelists on today, I think, can talk about a park that was essentially saved from loss by resident purchase. Third thing is the statutes now give residents the right to organize so they can buy their own park if their park is being sold, not necessarily closed, but simply being sold to an investor or a different park owner. Number four, park residents, as part of their protection, have something very, very critical. They have infinitely renewable one-year leases. They're guaranteed the right, everyone who lives in a mobile home park is guaranteed the right to a lease, guaranteed the right to renew it, not necessarily at the same rent. And if they want to sell their home, they have the right to sell it on site, and the buyer will get the same lease protection, renewal every year, that the original owner of the home would have. That creates a situation where if you buy into a mobile home park, you will not have to ever move. Again, you have to deal with rent increases, but you will not have to move. The fifth item is, as a result of all this, mobile home park residents are generally protected by eviction, by the laws that say that in order to evict someone, you have to have cause. You can't just say, a park owner cannot say, I don't want to renew the lease. The owner is going to have to say there is some cause for doing so. But that person can be evicted from a mobile home park if if they give cause, if they don't obey the lease, they damage the property, if you create a nuisance, any of the other kinds of things. But there are some, and this is number 6, there are some additional protections. So for example,
Rafi, you got a minute left.
okay, thank you. If you live in an apartment, before you can bring an eviction against someone, you start the process with a notice to quit. For people in an apartment, that notice gives you 3 days to move before the landlord can then start the eviction process. In a mobile home park, you get 60 days, unless it's for non-payment of rent, in which case you get 30 days. Either way, that's a lot more protective than it is for the general tenant population. Similarly, in a mobile home park, you get a right to cure during that notice to quit position, a right to cure for non-payment of rent. In other words, you could catch up on the rent. That's a right that in Connecticut, general tenants don't have. So it makes mobile home parks special. And it means, in some ways, it makes mobile home park residents, when mobile home park residents speak to protect their own interest in a mobile home park, they often are speaking on behalf of all tenants, not just residents of mobile home parks, because of this unique hybrid relationship in which they are often a homeowner, usually a homeowner, and simultaneously a tenant. So with that said, I kind of offer this to you as background in terms of what others on this panel will be saying. So Dave, thanks very much for the opportunity to participate in this.
Thank you, Rafi. So now we're going to move on to Al Riz. Al is the immediate past president of Ryder Woods, which is one of the only 3 manufactured home parks in Connecticut that are resident owned. That is a result. I just want to interject here that number is about 1 to 2% of the total manufactured home parks in Connecticut. In other states that have had right of first refusal statutes on the books longer, that statistic is 20 to 30% of manufactured homes in states with right of first refusal are already own their parks. So Al's going to tell you about his experience in Ryder Woods. Go ahead, Al.
How you doing? I'm Al Ritz. I'm the actually living at Ryder Woods in Milford for the last 20 years. The first 18 years I was on the board of directors, and then the last 6 years of my time I was serving as president of the board. And during all that time, I did not have a rent increase in the park at all. The park residents were told that 30 years ago that the park was going to be closing. At that time, I was able to get a hold of Rock, and they were able to fund the purchase of the park. Rock oversees the running of the park, makes sure that the finances are up to date, checks on the board, and also the management company that runs it for the board. Also assigns a rep from CDI to make sure that the park is operating correctly. Life is a lot better since we became a Rock HOA. There's no more harassment by the owners. The up and down with the rents we don't ever see. Residents vote every year on an annual budget, and as of now, there are 3 resident-owned parks in Connecticut. It's Ryder Woods, Colchester Commons, and one in Danbury. I don't know the full name of theirs. The life in a resident-owned community is affordable and a lot better off than the people have to put up with these people that come in and all of a sudden take over and jack up your rents and just make a miserable life for you. Anybody that wants more information on what the DCP has as far as the communities goes, you can go on their website for mobile homes. Chapter 412 is the section, and the section is 217013. And I just wish more communities could actually get to the point where they are resident owned. It would make their lives a whole lot better. Thank you.
Yeah, before we turn it over on to Dan Billings, I'd like everybody to know that Ryder Woods originally was moved from a location on Route 1, a very valuable piece of real estate, and with the help of ROC, which is Resident-Owned Communities, and CDI, where Laura Gosselin is from, we'll talk a little bit later, they were able to purchase another piece of land and some of those residents moved their homes. It's about what, 3/4 mile away, and others were able to purchase new homes at that time with the help of town government and with the help of the buyer of the property on Route 1. So with that, I'd like to move on to Dan Billings. He's the leader of the residents group at Stonegate Manor in Windham, Connecticut. Go ahead, Dan.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, said my name is Dan Billings, and I am a resident in Stonegate Manor in North Windham, Connecticut. And I'm also our president of our cooperative here in the park. And for a very short time, I was chairman of the Fair Rent Commission here in the town of Windham. Of course, knowing I was going to be filing a complaint, I resigned from that. And probably a good thing I did. It's taken an awful lot of my time getting that up and running. And in that vein, I'd like to recommend anybody that's in a manufactured home community, mobile home park, start now and get organized. You know, whether you've got a great local landlord or an out-of-state landlord that's more focused on increasing rents than taking care of the park, it's getting prepared now is really crucial. Many local park owners may want to retire, and large out-of-state investment groups are aggressively purchasing up these mobile home parks, and rent increases usually follow shortly after that. So don't wait. Getting organized now allows you to prepare to exercise your right of first refusal, as Dave was talking about before, and you'll be real glad you got something going ahead of time. And that was my number one reason to get involved here in the park. We had a meeting with CDI and Dave, and I think Rafi was there and a few other people. Our Senator Susan Johnson was there, and we knew right then and there that we needed to get organized and get ready in case this should ever happen. And I think the form of organization can vary, and I'm not sure it really matters in the long run, but just to get started. I began by creating a Facebook group in around September of 23, just to get the residents here communicating with one another and get them engaged. And that grew to about 100 members over the first 3 months, and we're a little over 200 today, which at least on the Facebook side of it gives us a majority of the homes in the park, which is, I think, a pretty good accomplishment. In February of that year, we started formally formed a cooperative or corporation, actually. And we started with about 50 members, and we're only at about 85 today. And we need 165 or so to have a majority, but I'm pretty sure we'll get there, especially with what we've got going on now. I've been picking up members almost daily. So getting organized allows us to successfully petition our town for the Fair Rent Commission, and that was we felt was a major accomplishment, really, because Windham didn't have the required 25,000 residents to make it a mandatory thing, so the town didn't have to do it. But our mayor was on board with us, and it took about 6 months, and we were up and running. And since then, we've had about 3 hearings. Mine was the first.
Dan, you're at the 4-minute mark.
Okay. Amazing. I only had 2 minutes when I wrote this. Mine was the first meeting that was held, and then we've had 2 more. for about 27. And the commission had ordered those 27, the rents to be reduced by about $200. So we're pretty encouraged by that. And like I said before, I would just encourage you to get started now and start organizing. It took us 2 years from the start of wanting a fair rent commission to filing the very first complaint. Um, so I'm still organizing. So uh, don't wait, get going on it. That's about it for me. And thanks for listening and for having us here today.
Okay, thank you, Dan. I want to really encourage everyone to emulate Dan's dedication and activity in organizing his park. They won a very significant victory, and the Fair and Commission decision in Wyndham, I think, is going to reverberate across the state and perhaps influence other fair and commissions that have outstanding fair and complaints from mobile home parks. And so we're just waiting, we also expect the owner to appeal it. And we have legal counsel that's going to hopefully, well, we have the town's legal counsel that will defend it, and perhaps legal counsel if individual residents are named as defendants in an appeal. The importance of Dan's statements about getting organized um, I think will be demonstrated aptly by our next speaker, Ben Mayo, who's leader of the residents group at Little Valley Mobile Home Park in Norwich. Little Valley attempted to exercise right of first refusal under the new statute, and were unable to. And I'll let Ben explain that a little bit. But their park has recently closed because they were unable to buy the entire portfolio it was part of. It really recently sold to another out-of-state corporate owner. Ben, I'll let you go into that a little bit more. You're on.
All right. So, to kind of expand on what Dave was saying about what happened with my park, about this time last year, shortly after Thanksgiving, everybody in the park received a letter stating that the park was going to be sold. That initial sale notice listed our park was being sold for $4,150,000 with a $200,000 deposit, and it was scheduled to close last March. As soon as I received that letter, I actually contacted the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, who referred me over to CDI and Nora, who's going to be speaking in a little bit. CDI helped to canvass the community. We left flyers and organized an initial meeting, which took place in the beginning of January. At that meeting, the members of the community kind of voted to proceed with, actually exploring the whole process to purchase our park. We held another meeting about 2 weeks later where the community gathered a lot more that time around. I think there was about 50 people in attendance. At that meeting is when our property managers and the park owners they came to the meeting with another letter stating that our park was being sold along with 6 others in Connecticut. They stated that in order for us to proceed with purchasing the park, they wanted us to purchase their entire portfolio. So 7 parks for $16 million. During that meeting, our community still voted to elect a co-op board, and we voted on submitting a matching offer. So the $4,150,000 for our community, which unsurprisingly, the owners rejected and said that they wanted us to proceed with purchasing all 7 parks. We explored a couple different avenues for us to, kind of try to, we explored some legal avenues to try to convince them that we should have had the right to purchase our park. Unfortunately, that didn't really work out for us. We did end up delaying the sale by several months. It actually just closed on November 7th. And unfortunately, that's all I can really thing to mention about the whole process. I mean, unfortunately, our state statutes, since it was part of a portfolio sale, did not give us a right of first refusal. Instead, it gave us an opportunity to purchase. But the park owners were under no obligation to actually accept our offer. They just had to consider it. And yeah, they considered it for all of about 20 minutes and sent us a letter saying no.
Okay, Ben, thank you very much. It's a good segue into Nora's role and CDI's role in trying to get park residents across the finish line. But also, I want to point out that it points out a weakness in our right of first refusal statute when it was originally passed back in 2023. Rafi and I negotiated extensively with park owners who insisted that portfolio sales be exempted from right of first refusal. We obviously, with what happened in Ben's situation, we need to revisit that, and we will be doing that in the next session. And I believe that similar actions have had to be taken in some of the other states where right of first refusal have been passed and then was in one way or another evaded by park owners. And I'm optimistic that we can do that. So with that, I'll move on to Nora, and she can explain her and CDI's role in helping manufactured home park residents in other states go through this process successfully. Thank you. Go ahead, Nora.
Yeah, and Dave just cut me off when I hit the time, but thank you for having me. As Dave said, I'm Nora Goslin. I'm the Director of Resident Acquisitions at a nonprofit called the Cooperative Development Institute, or CDI. And I've been with CDI for about 6 years, since 2019. And in that time, I've worked with about 40 different groups at some stage of the purchase process and done about $60 million of these transactions, $70 million of these transactions, which range in size from 29 homes in Western Mass to almost 300 homes in Mid-Coast Maine. And I also have had the opportunity to work with Dave and with Rafi on the Connecticut right of first refusal improvements, and 2 years ago at this point, and then also in Maine, where we first had an opportunity to purchase passed in 2023. And because of issues with that law and its implementation, we had it strengthened into a right of first refusal this last legislative session. And so the Cooperative Development Institute is about 30 years old. It's a 501c3 that is regional. So we work in all of New England except New Hampshire. And we have a worker cooperative agricultural arm, and we have a housing program, which is just focused on manufactured housing communities, mobile home parks. So we've been doing this work, this ROC work, resident-owned communities, since 2009. And in the last 15 odd years, we've done 65, as of last month, resident transactions, which are over 6,500 homes and over 320 million in financing for these resident groups to purchase their communities. We work with a very particular model of resident ownership that got started in the mid-1980s in Meredith, New Hampshire, when the first group of residents in a 13-home park bought their park for the deal of a lifetime in today's market, $34,000, with a loan from the Sisters of Mercy in town. And since then, the movement has really snowballed and spread across the country. Each region has their own nonprofit organizations in place supporting residents, organizing with residents to get through the purchase process, connect them with financing, and then help them run through technical advising and business coaching their resident-owned communities for decades. So we partner with a national organization like Al alluded to, ROC USA, but we're the actual in-person doing the work in New England and here in Connecticut. So generally speaking, our process starts, like Ben said, when residents get that notice. It's always at the inconvenient time. It always feels to be around Thanksgiving or Christmas or a holiday. No one ever really wants to see that notice. So I definitely agree with Dan that organizing ahead of time so you're well positioned to move quickly is always the better option. And, you know, residents get noticed, they pick up the phone to CHAFA or to CDI or to Al or to Dave. And somehow I get in the mix and we do the first meeting to kind of present the opportunity, to present the law, to look at the transaction, the deal that's on the table, and kind of talk about what that would mean, dollars and cents for the residents to wrap their arms around. My organization, I personally help groups get through the organizing process, which is done in the form of a petition to say, is there enough interest in the community to come to the table as a buyer? And we submit a purchase offer, connect groups with attorney representation, submit a purchase offer on, substantially equivalent price, terms, and conditions within that notice window, which is 45 days. And then groups have an additional 135 days to basically go through two very intense processes that groups can do in this time frame, one of which is a commercial real estate process, and the other is a cooperative development process. So the way I say it with groups is, you're in a sports car, we're going really fast, residents are in the driver's seat, I'm sitting shotgun, and we can get through these processes so that at the end of that, generally 90 to 100 days, residents are looking at a full business plan with financing options and can make an informed decision on purchase. I think I'd just end by saying that the financing in these resident purchases is very deal and state specific. They're commercial loans that are made to the association. Dan alluded to how these groups are set up. In Connecticut, we've done them as non-stock corporations. So they're loans that are made to the association with no consideration for individuals' credit scores. And they're usually up to 110% loan to value, which finances all of the closing costs of the transaction and ensures there's no down payments, because generally this is a right of first refusal bestowed on low and moderate income homeowners. So no one is got 20K burning a hole in their bank account to chip in towards a down payment on the purchase price. We're also helping groups finance the critical upfront infrastructure work that has often been deferred by private equity and real estate investment trust sellers, so that groups are buying, but they're also improving their asset that they're buying and fixing things that everyone knows needs fixing. And crucially, there's no personal assets at risk. The homes themselves are not collateral. Those are still financed and owned individually, same as they were in a privately owned park. And there are lenders, sometimes when I talk to folks, their eyebrows raise, what lenders would want to lend to a resident group of coming together to buy their mobile home park? Resoundingly, there are lenders that have been developed over the last 40 years who are ready and interested in financing these purchases. CAHC has a loan product that I know Dave knows better than I. I've worked most recently with Mass Housing and Maine Housing to close deals this year. So HFAs are often at the table. We also have a network of interested community development financial institutions like Rock USA Capital or the Cooperative Fund of the Northeast or the Genesis Community Loan Fund. We've got small banks, we've got large banks like TD. So there's no shortage of financing if the deal makes sense for the residents and residents want to move forward with resident ownership. There's a track record here as well of 40 years where none of these communities across the country have gone under. They all operate successfully like Ryder Woods for decades. And like Dave said, I just wrap by saying that there's a huge market in Connecticut where this law has not really been tested too much in the last 2 years since its passage. So I worked in Norwich with Ben and his neighbors, and also in Danbury last year. Neither times were those residents able to purchase their park, which leaves over 100 communities that are ripe for private equity and real estate investment trusts. Then there's only 3 resident-owned parks, like Al said. So there is a huge swath of communities that we would expect to come up for sale in the coming years and would want to make sure that residents are able to organize, able to purchase their parks. Did I do that in 5 minutes? That feels like it was longer, but Dave, you didn't cut me off, so I'll pass it back to you. You're on mute, Dave.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you went over 5 minutes, but I wasn't about to cut you off. I just wanted to thank you all, and I think Nora adequately, very succinctly described what we're trying to accomplish in the legislature with reining in rents and strengthening the existing fair rent statute. We will be at work. We are at work in drafting changes to the legislation. I feel that there may be a different climate in the legislature coming up, and I think that's reflected a lot in the decision of the Wyndham Fair Rent Commission. Politicians are beginning to recognize that mobile home parks are a significant part of keeping housing affordability. They just reduced the de minimis threshold for creation of fair rent commissions in Connecticut to 15,000 with the housing bill that was just signed by Governor Lamont the other day. That's good, but it's not enough. There are several parks that are still threatened by out-of-state corporations, increasing land rents way beyond, just like in Dan's situation, way beyond what other Connecticut-based manufactured home parks are charging. Um, with that, I don't know if there's questions out there, but we'll try to answer anything that might come up. And Danielle, I'll turn that process over to you.
Danielle had to step away, so I think I can jump in here and just encourage folks to either come off mute or pop their questions in the chat for this amazing panel of folks.
Okay. In the absence of questions, I want to just make a couple of points. In addition to fair rent complaints, there are 3 manufactured home operators in Connecticut at this point, including Sun Communities where I live, Equity Lifestyles where Dan Billings lives, and another called RHP that has parks in East Hartford, Clinton and Westbrook. Together, those parks probably control about 30% of the manufactured home sites in Connecticut at this point. Out-of-state corporations probably control almost 40% of the sites at this point, as of today. That's an estimate. The reason I bring this up is that those 3 entities, Sun Communities, ELS, and RHP, are all defendants in a nationwide class action lawsuit against mobile home park operators across the country, alleging collusion to price fix and escalate land rents in mobile home parks across the country. I bring this up because some of you out there that are trying to fight for affordable housing are probably familiar with the RealPage decision, the RealPage settlement that took place about a month ago regarding apartment conglomerates. That case was settled out of court in favor of residents to the tune of $141 million. Our case mirrors the mobile home park case is a mirror image. It's based on the same kind of facts, using a algorithm that's available across the country, and they compare notes with each other and say, we'll charge this much and you charge that much. We don't really know the particulars of the allegations, but the fact that it was settled out of court, I think, represents a significant positive development, and we hope the same thing will happen for in the mobile home park case. Rafi or Dan or Al or Ben Mayo, you want to, has anything, or Nora, you have anything else you want to add?
I don't want to add to that in particular, but I'm looking at the chat and I see there's a question. I'll read it. It says, is there any rent control or stabilization on the rent increases for mobile home park residents? And at this point, there is no special rule for mobile home parks, but the Fair Rent Commission statute, as Dave described earlier, right now applies to all towns with population of over 25,000. By the end of 2027, it will cover all towns over 15,000. And it also has a provision that is designed to not mandate, but encourage smaller towns to join into either multi-town or regional fair rent commissions, and it authorizes regional entities that are called councils of government to be an organizing force for bringing small towns together to create regional commissions. So that's kind of where things are at the present time. As Dave mentioned, there is at least one state that has sort of a mandatory mediation structure. which has not really been put in front of the Connecticut legislature as an option so far. And Dan, I thought I saw you making motions that look like you
Yeah.
want to say something.
Yeah, no, only that the Fair Rent Commission here in Wyndham, and it may not hold up at court, but they didn't want to end up here with 250 more complaints in a year from now. So they put a limit on what Stonegate could increase our rents to by CDI plus 0.75%. So inflation plus 0.75 is the most that they can go up for the next 5 years if it survives court. So that's as close as we've come to a rent cap in Connecticut that I know of.
That's I would say that's an accurate description of this, of where we are right now. As I stated earlier, we were not happy with the outcome of our efforts to implement a rent cap last legislative session, but we have been doing more research and watching developments, and we are going to come back with another proposal, and we're going to have it ready the first day of session. But we have to talk with the park owners and some of the other players out there to see if we're going to focus on expansion of fair rent commissions or implementation of park rent mediation or both. But clearly something has to be done for example, in a place like Beacon Falls, Connecticut, where there's an out-of-state park operator, there's a small park, and charges $675 per month in a park that people can't even have washing machines because of the state of the septic system. And an adjoining park, literally, they share a border. An adjoining park that's owned by a Connecticut based operator is charging $475 for park right next door, and they don't have the limitations of you can't have a washing machine. So, but they don't. That town is Beacon Falls. They don't have a fair rent commission, and the new law will not apply to them because they have less than 15,000 people, 15,000 residents in that town. So clearly, those people are and are going to continue to be at the mercy of this park owner who's increased their rents like $300 since he took over ownership in 2019. So we're not done, and we have a lot of work to do, but we are planning to make further legislation, submit further legislation going forward, and we expect to win. Anybody else? Any other questions out there? I don't know if there's any. Rafi, do you see anything else? Because I'm not seeing what you saw. Let's see. Chelsea, are you still there?
Here, there aren't any more questions, but if people have questions, please you can put them in the chat. But that was the only question there. Okay, well, if that's the case, does anybody else have anything else to add? I guess we're kind of going to wrap it up then. We're a little early. Okay, well, thank you all for coming and listening, and hope we can count on your support when we bring legislation forward in the spring.
We got a question.
Just came in. Yeah.
Oh, hey, Alex. I saw it, but now it's gone.
Okay, I'll read it to you. The question was, are there other states that offer financing models for conversions?
I could jump in on this one. So I only could speak for New England, but I know that the Pacific Northwest, like Oregon, has a good model that's working for them. I could find that out and send it to you, Alex. But in New England, we've seen a lot of HFA support for these purchases. So in Maine, Maine Housing, through an act of the legislature that we were involved in last year, set up a preservation fund for manufactured housing, and it's legislatively enabled, and it was just re-enabled or refunded in the last session. And those funds have gone directly towards acquisition financing stacks for resident purchases with very competitive interest rates. And I've also seen them used as like rent relief subsidies. So both in the acquisition financing stack, but then also staggered to phase in an increase and used as basically a form of subsidy for a period of time. And then in Vermont, we've seen states involved through tax-exempt bond financing to resident cooperatives to purchase. And in Massachusetts, we've seen Mass Housing and the Executive Office of Housing Livable Communities through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund do non-paying awards that are forgiven after 30 years of compliance with affordability requirements. All the affordability requirements are things that resident cooperative boards with CDI support, working with state agencies, have made sure are basically seamless with how resident-owned communities already function. They're not burdensome, and kind of just reflect who the residents already are, and preserve the fact that these are homes, these are personal assets, these are generally people's biggest asset. They need to be able to sell them for however much to whomever, whenever. So there's that flexibility we need to make sure is at play. And I've also seen the other end of it that's important, in addition to the acquisition financing, is the pre-development financing. So residents need to spend a pot of money to investigate whether or not a park purchase makes sense. Maybe the infrastructure is really shot and the appraised value is not there, and we can't reach a negotiation with the seller, and we can't have residents. Obviously no one's buying and going to be underwater right away. That was a situation we ran into last year in Danbury. So we have to spend that money to get the civil engineering inspection, to get the environmental site assessment, to get the appraisal. Generally speaking, we've seen credit unions, loan funds, CDFIs as the lender for pre-development in the form of a forgivable pre-development loan that is either rolled into the permanent financing or forgiven if the purchase doesn't make sense. But I've also seen HFAs like Maine Housing come to the table for that end of the lending too. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Nora. That was very helpful. Obviously, Nora is our go-to source of information on all things financing for mobile home park purchases. I will say that I don't know specifics, but I know that there's organizations in Colorado that have helped finance park purchases. I believe there was a couple in Minnesota. I think when Nora mentioned Pacific Northwest, so there are players out there that will contribute to financing these operations, and perhaps we need to look into try to form one of these in Connecticut, but that's for another day, another discussion. Again, thank you all. Anybody see any other questions?
Yeah,
Thank you, Alex, for that question.
But it wasn't.
Okay. Well, I hope everybody learned from this, and I hope, as I said before, I hope anybody watching, when we're looking for support for legislative change going into the spring session, we'll keep the information you have in mind. If you have any other questions, as I said, drop in the chat box, or you can contact the Alliance with any questions at, make sure I get this right, at ctmhoa.org. Again, ctmhoa.org. That way you'll be able to reach me by phone, or you can send an email that we will see and respond to as soon as possible. All right. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Al. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Rafi. Thank you, Nora. Thank you, everybody, for committing, and thank you, Danielle and Chelsea, for inviting us into this and giving us an opportunity to participate in the event. Thank you all.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you all for attending the panel. After this, there'll be a survey for the conference, and I do hope you're able to fill it out. And thanks again for an amazing discussion on this issue.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right.
Have a good Thanksgiving.
You do.